Western gaming companies still believe modern audiences are going to make them money when really it just means they want to lose as much cash as quickly as possible. And just a few weeks ago, we saw Sony's Concord beta open and it do absolutely nothing for numbers. Basically, nobody was playing it, even though it was a free open beta. But now on the flip side, we are seeing Mecha Break, a game that highlights things like fan service and having fun before putting DEI first, and it is doing crazy numbers. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, this is a game that really did kind of come out of nowhere. It had minimal advertising compared to, AAA billion-dollar companies. It's already outperformed games like Concord, and a lot of people are talking about it because they didn't decide to put, a focus on diversity or an inclusion first. They simply put a good game first, and things like diversity and inclusion are good. But the problem with Western companies is that they do sacrifice gameplay and good storytelling and character development to go down the checklist and to tick off as many boxes as possible when you could actually do both. But those companies don't care. But on the flip side, we have other companies from other places doing everything 10 times better than billion-dollar companies. It says, though, in this article by Video Games SI, Mecha Break playtest on Steam is pulling solid numbers. Yeah, this is a game that really did kind of come out of nowhere. It is in beta, it's not a full release, but it absolutely has blown away its competition for the most part when we're comparing it to something like Concord. It says a beta test for Mecha Break, the visually spectacular multiplayer shooter by Amazing Season Games, has begun running over the past weekend and seems to be pulling solid numbers. It peaked at 8,551 concurrent players on August 4th, according to SteamDB, and then currently it has more than 4,000 users fighting mechanized battles in the sci-fi game. So it did start last weekend, but the numbers have really held solid. As you can see, going over to SteamDB, there's 3,537 users in right now, and the all-time peak was only recent with 10,488, and the 24-hour peak is 7,422. Now, are these numbers, perfect in the grand scheme of things? No, there are games that pull 600 or 700,000 players, but the big difference is, first of all, this is a beta. It is crushing the numbers of other games betas like Concord, for example, which, yes, this is in competition with, but this was also a game that really didn't have any marketing. I personally saw almost no marketing for it. A lot of people were not talking about it because, again, they didn't really know of its existence. For it to come out of basically nowhere and do these numbers is pretty good. And you also have to consider the developers are not some, billion-dollar company. I'm sure a lot of you will remember, but just a couple of months ago, I had actually talked about Snowbreak Contaminant Zone on the channel because there were a bunch of voice actors for the game who refused to come back and voice more lines for their characters because the developers decided to go in more of a fan service direction. So because they put a highlight on fan service, the voice actors decided, we don't want to work with you anymore, thinking they were going to bully the devs, but that didn't work because the developers just said, okay, and then moved on with their day, and they aren't going to work with them anymore. So that is actually this studio, who, yes, has put quite a focus on fans and what they want first. And now, of course, that we have these numbers, we can directly compare them to something like Concord, which hilariously throughout all of its betas, especially its open beta that was free to everybody, failed to top 2,500 concurrent players. And this article says on its first day, but throughout that beta, it actually did not top 2,500 concurrent players. So if you look at Mecha Break's numbers, it's absolutely smashing these, and people on social media are voicing how happy they are to see this happen. And I have to agree. I love seeing, smaller developers be able to release something that is eye-catching, that is fun, and honestly that you could just get addicted to because it looks and feels really great. And that's what's happening here. There are so many people who are so happy to see this being a massive success because it's basically a middle finger to the Ubisofts who have, foregone fan service and really good gameplay in order to, put a highlight again on checking off boxes on their list for DEI. And it also, again, is just proof that you don't need $100 million to create something good. And there is no excuse that these large companies like Sony, like Ubisoft, why they can't put out content that is this freaking good, except for the fact that they have activists holding them back. There are tons of people in this thread talking about how happy they are to see this, how excited they are to see this. There's also people talking about First Descendant, which is very true. That's not a beta because the First Descendant is out, but it does feel like a very similar game. And the all-time peak at launch was 264,000 people, and it's still pulling in 55,000 players right now, but 78,000 for the 24-hour peak. So it's still doing really freaking solid. There's plenty of people saying they didn't make the female models ugly. That's why. Yeah, not every single character in a video game needs to be some 10 out of 10 bombshell, but it definitely doesn't hurt to have attractive characters, especially on your marketing, because at the end of the day, sexy does sell, and we're not sexists or misogynists simply for wanting female characters in our games to be beautiful. Plenty of people want to see beautiful characters in games. Well, what do you know? Games about land whales shooting at each other made by land whale developers lost to a game about sexy girls riding cool mechas made by base developers. It really is a very simple recipe for success. Representation done perfectly. I completely agree. Both the white and the black female models in this game look amazing. They look fantastic, and there's nothing to complain about here. Nobody is complaining. Nobody is saying, oh my gosh, there's, diversity quotas in this game, because there isn't. Nobody is complaining about these characters because they look fantastic and they don't look like land whales. And people are sick and tired of seeing female sexy characters sidelined for ugly land whales so that they can check off boxes. That did not happen with this game, and yeah, it is going really freaking well for the devs. They are getting a lot of positive attention right now, and it seems that they are going to have another major success under their belt once the beta, of course, is done, and once they fully release the game. So I will be keeping my eye on this, and to see if over the next few days journalists decide to come out and complain about this game and say, oh my gosh, the evil men are propping up this game because it has sexy women. Because yes, people do want to see sexy women in video games. That shouldn't be a problem. And right now, all of the DEI shooters like Sony's Concord are getting absolutely annihilated by a game that happens to be all about sexy girls. But that's all that I had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.